Fala galera do Conexão Guitarra, hoje estamos aqui com Andy Timmons, monstro da guitarra, sensacional, sem palavras, assisti ele no Bourbon Street, hoje estamos aqui no em&t. Hi and welcome to Conexão Guitarra, right. Guitar Connection.
Guitar Connection.
Yes,
right.
It's an honor to receive you here.
Well, thank you.
Everybody asks a lot of your gear and equipment, and we will show your rig. But I'm going to ask some different questions for you.
Okay, cool.
The first question is, how and when did you start to listen Brazilian music and learn Brazilian songs?
Well, back when I was about 16, I found a local guitar teacher in Evansville, Indiana, where I grew up. I started when I was 5, and I was self-taught. But by the age of 16, I really knew that music was going to be my life. And I was reading about all the session guitar players in L.A. Larry Carlton and Steve Lukather, and Tommy Tedesco had a column in Guitar Player magazine where he was talking about all these recording sessions. So at the age of 16, I was already a good rock player, and I was playing professionally. But I knew that in order to be a session guy, you had to know how to read music. You had to know how to play all different styles. So I sought out a guitar teacher, basically to learn how to read, but he just happened to be a big jazz guitar fan, and he was kind of like a Barney Kessel type guitar player, and so he was turning me on, in addition to the simple reading lessons, kind of had to start as a beginner with the lessons, but he knew I could play, so he kind of took me under his wing and was playing me Barney Kessel and Joe Pass, and even Oscar Peterson on the piano. I'll never forget that one of the earliest versions of Triste that I heard was on an Oscar Peterson record. Just a burning version of this great Joe Beam song. So, but the thing was, with all those great jazz guitar players, after Ipanema hit in '64, all the American jazz players were incorporating bossa nova into their repertoire because it was, very relatable, because it was straight eighth notes instead of all the swing, and it was just a more, I think, universally appealing music, really. Even though the harmonies were closely to jazz, certainly the jazz influenced the bossa, but then where Joe Beam and everybody took it was just such a beautiful music. So I was getting it secondhand through all the American jazz guitar players playing the Brazilian stuff, and it was as part of my lessons I was learning Ipanema and Wave, and maybe even Decifinato back in the day. But I hadn't yet really heard the original versions. I heard Astrid Gilberto with her versions of English versions of Joe Beam songs, which I love too. But the thing about bossa nova was that as a rock player, it was a great segue to swing jazz. But as a rocker, the bossa beat was more natural to me because of the straight eighth notes, right? But then but over the years, so I as I would occasionally dig back into my jazz studies and never thought of myself as a great jazz player, but it really, really informed how I thought about and played rock and roll, because of the necessity for voice leading and really learning, how to navigate these chords, right? So this now fast forwarding to coming to Brazil many times and different clinic tours for G&I with my good friend Sydnei Carvalho. There was one tour several years ago where I came and I thought, I should play a bossa nova at every gig because I'd done it a couple of times and it always seemed to impress the crowd. Like, some Brazilian music, right? Yeah. It was usually Ipanema or something. But I thought, let's do that. Let's play every day. But I was thinking, I know Sydney's a great electric player, but I was thinking maybe we could find somebody in each city, somebody that really knows bossa. He goes, what? I'm playing bossa. My daughter, my wife, they sing, and I'm learning all these songs. So I'll bring my nylon string guitar. So we made it a point every day in the middle of the clinic, we'd sit down and play a couple of bossa tunes. It just kind of snowballed into this project. We started learning more and more songs, and because I knew a handful of tunes, but he turned me on to Caminos Cruzados and Ligia and Fotografia, and I had not heard these songs. One thing led to another, and some YouTube videos came out, and Marcos Valle responded to our version of Summer Samba. We couldn't believe it, and then somehow we were in touch with Roberto Menescal, and he got excited about it and said, hey, I want to produce a record. Come to my studio. So then I was like, oh, man, okay, I really need to do my homework. So I started really studying, and I started going back to all the original versions. I hadn't really heard Joe Gilberto as much as I wish I had, but, man, hearing how he plays the guitar and how he sings those melodies, so I really got into really trying to absorb as much of the original feel of these songs as I could, so I could accurately, try to sing them in my voice, but to have real knowledge of the phrasing and what the Brazilian feel was all about. So then just getting to discover so many great old recordings and falling in love even deeper with the music and with Joe Beam, the great songs that he gave us, it's just such a blessing. And now here we are on tour playing some of these songs.
And you did it.
I don't know. It's hard for me to say, but people seem to have responded pretty well to it. So I'm very honored by that. It means a lot.
I saw and listened that you're very comfortable improvising in these intricate Brazilian harmonies, making very melodic phrases and smooth chord transitions. Are you still thinking in chord by chord, or you are seeing the big picture of the music?
The best case scenario would be to see the big picture, but to be honest, yes, I'm still thinking chord to chord in some of them. Like I say, in the best case scenario, you can forget as much as possible and just let melody guide you. So what's happening is a combination of the two, because there's some pretty tricky chords to navigate, and I'm very aware, even when it's not as complex, I'm uber aware of maybe what the overall key center might be, but I'm really aware of each chord as it's happening, and I try to address that as each chord is happening. So that comes from the study of the bossa and of jazz, how to voice lead through the chord changes and that type of thing. So thank goodness before this project came up, I'd gotten back into really shedding a lot of jazz and stuff, and just trying to acquaint myself with that type of study, because that's always been an underlying influence, but I'd gotten away from playing jazz all the time. But about 4 or 5 years ago, I got back into practicing and playing with the iReal book, a little app, where you can play any standard in any key. So I utilize that every day. That's one of my favorite practice tools, because it just kind of gets your ear and your hands going a little bit. But so I would say, you're hoping to connect in a big picture way, but I am navigating chord to chord and trying to connect them as melodically as I can. That's at the end of the day, we can plug in lots of licks. But one of the guys that really has influenced me enormously is Chet Baker, and he's one jazz guy where I don't feel like there's a lot of licks happening, and it's I love the sound of guys that really have a lot of bebop vocabulary and they can string it all together, and it can be so impressive, and I love the sound of it. But I've kind of avoided going down that path for a reason. I mean, part of me, I know some of the lines, and I will plug them in still. But I want to be more in the moment and really try to have the melodies be like singing. That's my goal. Maybe a combination of a little bit of some of the classic lines, but that's what always struck me about Chet, and he always connected with me emotionally, and so I use that as kind of a guiding star in a way, to where I want to be more in that vein than I do too much of a preconceived idea of what I'm saying. Though sometimes we need those ideas to have a conversation musically or whatever it might be, but to make sense of the style, exactly. So that was one thing that Sydnei really helped with when we were getting headed towards recording. I had a tendency to want to plug in more with a Pat Metheny kind of clean tone, and the way he approaches Brazilian type of music, which he was another influence for me too, because I know he learned so much from Brazilian and brought it. He does live. Oh, he does. Okay, well that makes sense to me. It makes sense because it really became eventually. He was, okay. He's a smart man, I suppose. So he certainly took so much of that and presented it to the world in a way, that hadn't been done before. So yeah, I mean, I keep trying to. What I was saying about the Metheny influence was that when I was considering Brazilian, I was thinking to myself, but I was trying to sing with Pat's type of voice, the dark, warm, clean. And Sydnei was like, no. With your bluesy tone, he really kind of helped steer me in a way that was more me than me trying to be somebody else. And so that was really valuable, because I think that gave it more of the personality that it has. And I still want that Metheny thing, and I love that tone. I want that to be part of my palette. But it did, I think, allow me to present the material in a very more personal way, you know.
And you bring some fresh style for us, because I have the tendency to play like Pat Metheny too.
It's not a bad tendency, because but you know what? But it is interesting. And we were listening to a really famous jazz guitar player in the past couple of days, driving around. Jay Napoli's been helping drive to some of these gigs. And this one guy who's a really great jazz player, there was this one record where it just sounded like he was being too much like Pat. And so I have to catch myself too, because I've done some work like that. You get that tone, you start phrasing a certain way, and it's, you know, it's a big tribute to Pat. But at the same time, you know, we need to try to establish our own voice. Right at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. But it is, you know, he's such a integral part of the jazz guitar sound now, and so we have to be careful not to play too many West octaves and not to play too much like Pat. I mean, but at the end of the day, we are a collection of our influences. There's luckily for me, there's everybody from Pat to Ace Frehley, so it's somewhere in there is me, you know. I hope, but so sometimes I go too far one direction, but still trying to find my own thing, I guess.
Now, talking about your biography and musical history, I saw that you studied at Miami University.
Yes.
Yeah. And did you think that having this experience make you a better musician?
Oh.
And what is the greatest lesson you learned there?
Well, I spent 2 years at the University of Miami, 1983 to 1985. And speaking of Pat Metheny, he was, you know, one of the reasons, because he was kind of the legend of having gone there, even though he became a teacher. Like, I think after the first week, you know, I was like, you're not a student, you're a teacher. Okay. And the Dregs had formed there, and Jocko didn't go to school there, but he was, you know, he was kind of he lived there, you know. So my first 2 years of study, I was a classical major, because my local university offered a guitar program. So I knew nothing about classical guitar, but it was, I enjoyed the exposure and the experience, but I wanted to be playing electric guitar in school. So when I got into Miami, I will easily say it was the 2 biggest years of my growth. And part of it was the curriculum. I mean, the teachers were great, the studies were great, but it was all the other players. You know, I had grown up in a relatively small town in the Midwest of America, and, you know, there was some good players in town.
And Indiana, it's the land of Wes Montgomery.
Yes, of course, Wes Montgomery, absolutely. Yeah, he was from up in Indianapolis, that's right. Amen to that. Oh, gosh. So, but it was like, you know, I quickly became, you know, one of the better guitar players in the town. And so when I got to Miami, though, I mean, the level of playing was through the roof, and it was like, holy shit, I got some work to do, which I knew I did anyway, but there's not a better situation to be in than to be around a bunch of other, you know, musicians that are as inspired and hopefully better than you know, because I think that's how you grow the most, when you're like, man, these guys got all this shit together. So it was as much of the school as it was just the guys I was hanging with, and we were all learning from each other. I was definitely the rock guy. You know, all these jazz guys wanted to be the rock guy, and the rock guy wanted to be the jazz guy. So we all learned from each other. You know, there was great bebop players and fusion guys, and guys that were very versatile too. But it was that hang, and I was very fortunate that I was in a top 40 band. I played 6 nights a week. So it was complete immersion, where I was in school all day, you know, learning, you know, transcribing Wes and Charlie Parker licks. And then I would take that information and play it on Madonna songs or whatever at night, you know. And so that was the ultimate experience of me, because information is useless without application, right? If you have all this great stuff, but you're not using it, it's like, I'm sure people have had the experience of learning a foreign language. Like I studied German in high school, just because we pick a language, okay, German, great. But then after high school, you know, I never got to use it until, you know, 15 years later, I went to Germany and went, it starts to come back. But if you have to use it, you have to apply it and incorporate it and speak. You got to speak the language, and that's the same with music. So I look back fondly on that time because of the inspiration of all the guys that were humbling me, having great teachers and that were intimidating me, and I needed to work hard to try to get it together. And then having a gig, you know, it was a complete blessing, and I treasure it, you know.
Last question. One of my favorite songs of you is Super 70s and Falling Down. I love it. Is that tape on the beginning of the record for real?
Oh, God, yes. So two two things happened. Well, I wrote the song Super 70s, and that has that, decidedly in major 7-chord progression. But I had this bag of cassette tapes. I was going through it. I recognized some of the old labels of the cassettes that I had when I was a kid. And I found that tune. And that's me in about 1980 or 81. In my bedroom, I was playing into, I'll never forget, I had a Pioneer Centrex record player, but it had a input jack, and I could distort the headphones or play through the speakers. I was playing through the speakers. And it's totally me trying to write a Todd Rundgren song. Because those harmonies are the, It's the same song. It's the same freaking song. 2 major 7 chords. Yeah. So the funny thing about it, and then I had this other tape of me practicing where my mom comes in and says, Andrew, time for dinner. So, but after the fact, I thought, I could use that as an intro. But I couldn't find the tape of the one with my mom, right? So we took the other tape of me writing that song back in the late 70s, early 80s. So, but I had to have my mom record that snippet. So she did it over the phone, I think, but it sounded just like she had done it back in the day. So when we finished the record, we sent the mix to my mom, right? And the final record, and we sent it to her. And I didn't hear anything from her. I thought, she's going to be on my record. I thought she'd be excited about it, right? And I finally, like after a week, I called, hey, Mom, did you get the CD? Yeah, I got the CD. Well, what did you think? What did you think? It's you can barely hear it. I thought, that's my mom. She's bitching about the mix. So anyway, that really is me playing when I was a kid, writing that tune. And we had to overdub Mom because I couldn't find the other tape of her. But hopefully I'll find that one day because she's passed on now. So hopefully I'll get a chance to find that tape. But so it's a nice little moment for me to have Mom on the record,
Really nice history. Thank you very much for your time here.
Thank you for your help today.
I hope you will always come to Brazil to play for us. It's wonderful.
I'll be here every time.
Valeu, galera. Conexão Guitarra.